Hello and welcome. This is Ceeej Martinez. I'm a UV, acrylic, and glow-in-the-dark artist. I primarily work with acrylics, but sometimes some other mediums. I'm here to present to you a time lapse of a painting that I made on New Year's Eve of 2020, going into 2021. I wanted to think of something that would probably take you away from all the hectic craziness that is last year, 2020. And I wanted to give you guys another mermaid piece. So with this one, I wanted to actually take a concept I made a long time ago and just kind of up my skills a little bit more. So with this one, I kind of have a bright light above and darkness down below, kind of signifying going from dark past into a bright future. And I'm gonna pretty much have some jagged rocks all around that the mermaid will be escaping from. The paints I'm using are acrylics, and they all have a UV and glow-in-the-dark effect based on like how much of the neons and the glow-in-the-dark pigments that I add into the mix. I pretty much started this pretty much early evening of December 31st, and I finished a few hours before. As you can see, I am pretty much working at layers. I set out my background colors and then I start adding in some of the foreground. In this case, I'm adding some shadows into the rocks, in which I'm applying with a palette knife. I love using the palette knife for rocks because it kind of gives a nice rugged effect depending on what kind of texture you're going for. Now at this point, I'm going to start adding in some of the glow on top of the rocks. And periodically throughout this entire sped up video, you will see the light go on and the light go off. And by doing this, it kind of gives me an idea how it looks in regular light, the black light, and also when all the lights are off. At the end of the video, you will see the finished products and 3 stills I have, and you can also visit my Instagram to see it for yourself as well. This piece is also available via my Art Loop store, in which I have various different UV reactive art pieces, as well as some sketches and some other varied pieces that you can find on there. But now let's get to the fun part, which is always painting the mermaid. So whenever I start painting the mermaid, I don't sketch out anything on the actual canvas. I just go right into it. That's the beauty about acrylics. You can actually do that without having any kind of like repercussions, because you can always paint over it and you don't have to wait a long time for it to dry. So in this case, I'm just starting with a titanium white, kind of mixed with a little unbleached titanium. Now the entire body I will kind of tint a little bit with some blues, just to kind of reflect the background, but not as much, so it's a little more vibrant. So as you can see, I'm kind of giving this kind of freedom pose of her emerging from beneath the depths. And I'm just kind of going in with my filbert brush, kind of adding in all the white, making sure none of the light in the background is actually bleeding through, which is always one of the main things I look at whenever I'm painting any of these UV paintings, because it's always awful to see something in the background kind of bleed through the painting that you have in the foreground. And once I have the entire format of the mermaid set, I start defining some certain features and start adding in the colors. And I always start with getting all the values in there. So in this case, I'm just using a dark ultramarine blue, kind of capturing some of the shadows, really making the image pop as it is right now. Now, once I get everything in there, I just kind of blend it in so then it doesn't just look like blocks. And even on her head, where it will probably have a ton of hair, I'll add a little bit of shadow, just for safety. Now, if you know me, I am a local artist in San Diego, and everyone knows me as like I'm the UV artist guy, and I paint a lot of mermaids, and those are always like the ones that people cherish around here. I mean, SoCal, everyone loves mermaids somehow. So I wanted to do something a little bit different with the tail. Instead of doing the traditional green tail that's kind of metallic with some colors, I decided to just go with some pinks. I thought it would be appropriate for this piece because I was like, how can I make this a little bit different from my past pieces? And I was like, let's test out these color transitional paints that I have. So if you kind of angle the piece, you can kind of see differences in hues, and it's actually pretty cool. But of course, every time I paint scales, I always kind of dab on with the brush, and you can see I'm always running back and forth, adding more and more paint, and then gradually seeing how it is with the black light, and then eventually in a bit you'll see how it looks in the glow in the dark. So as you can see, it's kind of developing a little bit better, and I'm going to start adding in some more flesh tones. Now with some of my previous videos, I had some music playing, but in this case, I don't want to come across any copyright issues, but I wouldn't mind playing music. But I do have music playing in my ear at the time of this painting. And now I'm starting with the hair, that I'm just starting with a white before actually deciding what color hair should I give her. Do I want to make her all Ariel status and give her red hair like many previous ones, or do I want to change it up a bit? Now on New Year's Eve, I was actually doing a live stream via my Facebook, and just kind of asking for suggestions from fellow friends, artists, followers, what they would prefer seeing the color of the hair. I'm trying to communicate better with a lot of my followers, so then they can kind of interact with my pieces in progress. Of course, it's so much easier doing these pieces live in a venue, and then all of a sudden it just kind of jumps to this. I don't know what happened between this little transition. I must have missed a clip, but I added some more black in there to really define some of the shadows. I apologize for that, but as you can see, it really makes it pop. So I started with those blues, and then I started the blacks. And if you look carefully at her rib cage, I decided to add the gills there because that's where the lungs are. And the hair is slightly pink with a little bit of purple shadows, and it illuminates pink when she's coming up to the surface. So as you can see, I'm just kind of going in, starting to add slight little details, blocking out more light as I progress with this piece. Then I decided to add some seaweed among those rocks, because can't have underwater rocks without some seaweed and a little extra color in there. And now I'm going to start highlighting her with the light from above. And this is where it starts getting interesting. You start seeing how it looks more in UV and in the glow in the dark. So those quick little flashes to darkness are how it looks in darkness, glow in the dark, when all the lights are off, especially when exposed to light throughout the day. Now I'm just kind of adding some more highlights to her tail. It was already illuminating pink, but let's go ahead and brighten it up even more with that sunlight from above, which is a nice bright yellow. Now, if you're ever wondering how to check out any of my pieces, or like see any progress or even have a commission for me for whatever reason, you can always contact me via my Instagram. I have my link in the bottom right corner at Ceeejinator. I pretty much go like by the artist name, the Ceeej, because CJ, and you know, I'm the Ceeej. I kind of go by that. Kind of a nerd, but I wanted to just kind of share these pieces. And I have a plethora of them, so feel free to check them out. Right now I'm just adding the splash and bubbles and fine little touches, and then you'll see the stills in the following pictures. Now with all my pieces, they are viewable in 3 ways: the normal light, the black light, and glow in the dark. They are all originally painted. I don't sketch any of my paintings except for oil paintings, which I'm starting to experiment with. And I always like fantasy. I love fantasy, I love comic books, I love horror, and you can see that based on a lot of my pieces. And in this case, I really love painting mermaids. I just love mythical creatures, and those are ones that are just really fun to paint, and I felt like enjoying New Year's Eve that way. So here's some stills that you can see right about now. So I named it Escaping the Depths, and this is how it is viewed in the normal light. So during daylight, this is what you'll see. Now, when you have access to a UV light, a UV blacklight, you can illuminate that, and this is the view you'll actually see. It really brings out more of the blues, kind of that underwater feel. Really quite mysterious. And then when all the lights are off and has had plenty of time in the light, it can glow in the dark, and you'll see a plethora of different colors while the light is off, even when the light is completely off.